Hello, everyone. Welcome to African Esquire TV. I'm your host, Tony Cherie. I wanted to cover this story because I seen it on my Twitter and I thought it was so telling. So the U.S. election obviously just transpired. Everyone and their mama who rides for the Democrats was telling Africans in America, hey, guys, you need to make sure that you vote for Biden. Because what we can't let happen, and I've heard this from a lot of people, what we can't let happen is more conservative Supreme Court justices. Now, my thing always when people would say that is the burden of proof is on you. Show me what history that you have that the Supreme Court justices being conservative is going to be determinative of the quality of life of Africans. Because I tell you, many of these justices that were appointed by Obama, right, who was supposed to be this great beacon of change in America. Well, a lot of these people have been voting consistently against things that would have an impact on Africans in America. But honestly, y'all, I don't think that usually the things that go to the Supreme Court in 2020 are going to significantly change the situation of Africans in the United States. Even the Byron Island lawsuit, I mean, that would have made things better for him, a capitalist. But our issues are not more representation in capitalism. Our issues are capitalism. But that aside, we're consistently told that, hey, these things that are going to be done if these conservatives get to be inside of the Supreme Court, we're consistently told that by these pundits. So someone put on Twitter, I wish I had the tweet, but I didn't save it, unfortunately, but they were talking about the fact that the Supreme Court is looking like they're going to essentially, they're not going to overturn Obamacare. But is that a showing that the Supreme Court is not is like that they're not against Africans, or is that a showing that Obamacare is actually not going to be a threat to the dominant society? I think definitely the later. So I just want to read briefly through this article. A Supreme Court appears likely to uphold Obamacare. The Supreme Court, with a newly constituted and far more conservative majority, took another look at Obamacare. It's the second time. But at the end of the day, even with 3 Trump appointees, the Affordable Care Act looked as though it may survive. To many, it may have seemed like deja vu. Yes, the Supreme Court did uphold Obamacare 8 years ago. And by the way, guys, the swing vote that actually ensured that Obamacare was upheld was Justice Roberts, who is a Republican. It ruled that the so-called individual mandate requiring people to either have health insurance or pay a penalty was constitutional because it amounted to a tax. But in 2017, Congress decided it did not need the penalty and zeroed it out. At the time, not only congressional leaders, but also Trump crowed about terminating the mandate. But on Tuesday, the Trump administration and a group of GOP-dominated states, including Texas, were back in the high court with a new challenge. They contended that because the mandate language is still in the books and because the mandate was so interwoven into the provisions of the Affordable Care Act, the whole law should be struck down in its entirety. Okay, let's scroll down some. So Justice Amy Coney Barrett wondered aloud why the court should not strike down the mandate since it raises no revenue now and thus could no longer be justified under the Congress taxing power. When the lawyers seeking to have the whole law struck down began to argue, they ran into real pushback, and not just from the court's liberals. Addressing Texas Solicitor General Cal Hawkins, Roberts said, I think it's hard for you to argue that Congress intended the entire act to fall and if the mandate were struck down when the same Congress that lowered the penalty to zero did not even try to repeal the rest of the act. And with a jab at congressional Republicans, Roberts added, I think, frankly, that they wanted the court to do that, but that's not our job. Justice Brett Kavanaugh echoed the Chief Justice's sentiments, saying, it does not seem fairly, Brett Kavanaugh, another conservative, it does not seem fairly clear that the proper remedy would be to sever the mandate provision and leave the rest of the act in place, the provisions regarding pre-existing conditions and the rest. Okay, Clarence Thomas, we know him, right? He chimed in with this question for the Texas Solicitor General. The individual mandate now has no enforcement mechanism, so it's really hard to determine exactly what the threat is of action against you. which is interesting because I was always told Justice Thomas doesn't ask questions, but maybe I'm wrong. Or maybe the person who told me that was wrong. And then Sonia Sotomayor said in an argument about striking it down, she said, at some point, common sense seems to me would say, huh? Okay. So, all this to say, a lot of people are not looking to essentially, a lot of the justices don't look like they're going to strike down the individual mandate. Now, how do we want to look at this? Let's look at this two ways. First of all, is Obamacare something that is a Black issue or something that's African issue? Not really. I mean, that's something that we're told, oh, Obama gave you Obamacare. But honestly, I know a lot of people who even the healthcare on Obamacare is not even affordable for them. They still avoid the hospital because their Obamacare healthcare is not that good. In fact, I used Obamacare briefly when I was in law school, and I could tell you it was not that good. But despite that, a lot of people possibly benefit. I don't know. I would have to hear more from them. But the point is this an African issue? No, it's not an African issue. This is how the bourgeoisie is willing to accommodate the working class or the proletariat, whatever you want to call them. That is that they'll allow you to have some things in order to continue the power and the reins and to continue the privatization of the overall healthcare field and to basically quiet you. Because obviously when you look at certain countries that are supposed to be more forward in Europe or whatever, they all have free healthcare. And then you look at the United States that has way more money and they say, well, we can't have free healthcare. But then they say, well, we'll invent this thing called Obamacare and we'll give you an option to basically get healthcare, pay a penalty, and we'll give you this thing called Obamacare. Although the thing is certainly not free, it's actually could be a lot more expensive for you depending on who you are, but we'll give you this. It's a handout, right? This is how the political system does, particularly in the United States. It's not about reform. It's not about actually leveling the playing field. It's about continuing the same scheme while trying to find a way to appease those who feel as though something is done, that they have been wronged. But let's be honest. I mean, if the system still tolerates low quality healthcare and expensive healthcare for poor people, then how could this ever be labeled something not just for Africans, but for poor people in general? So I say all this to say that Obamacare is not only not for Africans, but it's really not that liberal of a policy. And you know that, again, from the fact that you have a lot of conservative justices who are backing the legislation. That should be very telling to you. Because I promise you, if it was Medicare for all, it would be a very different scheme. So with that, my other question goes to the people who said we have to vote for Biden because otherwise the Supreme Court justices are going to be all conservative and our quality of life is going to be diminished. I ask you, obviously there are issues outside of those that affect African people, but I ask you particularly to tell me what issue you're talking about. Because if you're saying you're going to strike down Obamacare, which again is not an African issue, but if it were, as you may try to make it seem, then why was it being upheld by the same Supreme Court? Essentially, how many excuses do you want to use to just tell us to keep being slaves? And how dumb do you think we're going to keep being to keep going on with this and keep doing things and sacrificing our own political legitimacy as a group, a conglomerate, in order to allow your favorite politician, your favorite figure, whatever, to continue to be inside of the position they are in? The question is always how long. And for these people in the Democratic Party, they are fine with this continuing endlessly. So that's all I have on this. What are your thoughts on this? The argument that, hey, we had to get these conservative Supreme Court justices out. What's your argument on that? I mean, what's your thoughts on that argument? And also, what are your thoughts on the fact that Obamacare wasn't even that threatening to these conservatives that were a couple of whom were actually appointed by Trump? So that's all I have on this, and I will see you guys in the next video.